Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Andrea Mérida. I'm one of the national co-chairs of the Green Party of the United States. And we are here doing the GreenStream show, which is a new initiative here that the party has taken on to make sure that you know what's going on in your national party. And I'm really excited today. I'm from Colorado. I live in Denver. I'm actually hold another I wear another hat as the state co-chair of the Green Party of Colorado. And I'm really, really excited to bring this guest on and to talk to you. Her name is Merrily Mazza. She's running for re-election for the city council in Lafayette, Colorado, which is, we're debating whether it's a suburb between Denver or Boulder, but it's in that general vicinity on our Front Range. It's a really beautiful community. And our state party is extremely excited to have Merrily in our candidate roster this year. She's a fighter. She's very well known in the Front Range part of the state. So Merrily, welcome to the show tonight. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I just love this stuff.
Absolutely. Boy, that smile is pretty big at this point in the campaign. So that's a good
that's a good sign.
So I gave people just a kind of like a quick and dirty about who you are, where you are, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what brings you to this, and just tell us about who Merrily is.
Good. I am not a Colorado native. I grew up in Chicago and I lived there all my life. So when I retired about 6 or 7 years ago, I thought, I can't stand this weather anymore. My son and daughter-in-law and my granddaughter at the time had moved to Colorado, also from Chicago. And I thought, I like Colorado. I love that area. It's beautiful. I had worked here for a little bit of time when I was still working. And so I packed up and I moved to Colorado and bought a home about 6 years ago and moved into this area in Lafayette. Lafayette is a very interesting community. It's just lovely, where you can see the mountains out my window. It's kind of a suburb of Denver and Boulder, kind of equal distance, almost equal distance between the two. But I've run into a lot of retirees here, just like me, who have moved to Colorado because their kids and their grandkids are out here. So it's been a unique and very special community for me. I really love it. It was an old mining community at one time, so there's a lot of history here. Now, of course, it's much bigger and become a little more suburban, and a lot of newcomers, a lot of people who move to Colorado tend to gravitate to this area because it's so close to Denver and Boulder. But it's a great community, very historic downtown. We've done a lot of work in our urban has done a lot of work there to make it very quaint, historic, pulls in a lot of business. And so the town is, I would say, reasonably prosperous, in good financial shape, and great community to live in. So the next question is, why did I run for city council, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wonderful. What caused me to do this? One of the things that shocked me when I moved from the Midwest, I saw these tanks in the middle of fields, and this is how dumb you are when you come from the Midwest. I thought they were water tanks, as almost everybody does who moves here from out of state. It turns out they were oil and gas wells, and originally they had been on farmland. Of course, now it's, more houses and less farmland. And so you realize that, and then you realize that this is not the kind of oil and gas development that went on 30 years ago. Now what's happening in my area, in Boulder County, in the city of Erie and Broomfield and all our neighboring communities here in Colorado, is that there are massive oil and gas well pads, and they're right in the middle of neighborhoods. It's frankly shocking. It's just completely shocking to me, and it was shocking to me how much control the industry has over the whole state apparatus when communities say, now, wait a minute, we live here. We're the ones who are impacted by this. We should be the ones to decide whether we want to allow this or don't, just like marijuana happened in Colorado. The same thing. When we passed that at the state level, communities were able to decide, yes, we want to allow this, or no, we don't want to allow it. So the very difficult part was understanding that communities have been rendered essentially powerless by this industry in the state of Colorado. And it's encroaching on neighborhoods. I mean, it's horrifying to see this operation go on. So I got involved with this with a group of mothers in Erie, Colorado, who were fighting a massive well pad right next to an elementary school. That's how bad it was. And since that time, I've just been steadily involved with it. My own city has told people there will never be any massive drilling here in Lafayette. I call it the Golden Dome theory. It will never happen to us. The last well in Lafayette was years ago. It's one of these old vertical wells. Well, sure enough, we could see, and I could certainly see, the marching west from Erie into the area. We do live on the shale formation here. And so I got involved with the community rights initiative, saying, wait a minute, we're the community. Who has the rights in this situation? And we got an initiative on the ballot in 2013 that said we have a right to community self-government, we have a right to clean air and clean water, we have a right to ban fracking as a violation of that right. And when I was working on that ballot initiative, I said, I'm going to run for office. So I ran for office in 2013, and I was elected then as in the course of that event. So that's pretty much my history, not something I ever expected to be doing when I was retired. So,
and here's your second career.
Here's my career, ill-paid, I might say.
But your background, you have a very interesting background. Corporate executive. Tell us a little bit more.
Yes, I worked in educational publishing for 32 years. I started as a copy editor many, many years ago when I first got out of college, and I managed to survive that industry. And the company I worked for was owned by McGraw-Hill, the famous textbook company. I worked in the college division for many years, and then the last 5 or 6 years I worked with the K-12 publishing division. I was on the operations side of the business. I was not a sales rep. And when I retired, I was a vice president at McGraw-Hill. So it was kind of an interesting switch going from that corporate world into politics and political activism and running for office. It was a really interesting switch.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And then you retire, you get involved in keeping the air and the water clean. You get involved in this ballot initiative, and you say, yeah, I'm running for city council. So it's been an interesting, and your term was 4 years so far?
4 years. Mm-hmm.
And so that's been a really interesting time to be an elected official in Colorado.
Yes.
There's been so much talk about the community rights aspect of this fracking fight. Mm-hmm. And there's actually been some interference by other elected officials, even a congressman, at the federal level. Mm-hmm. And so this aspect of community rights is a big thing. So this ballot initiative, Lafayette was actually one of the cities that actually passed a fracking ban within the city limits, right?
Yes, we did.
So what happened?
Well, of course, within 2 weeks, we were sued by the Colorado Oil and Gas Association, as was, every other city that passed a ban or moratorium. And the city the organization I was part of, the city would not let us become interveners in that case in the lawsuit, because we knew what the city was going to do. They were going to defend this lawsuit on the basis of state preemption, which of course is a loser. And it loses for every community that tries that. And we said, no, we want to intervene in the case with our own attorney so we can bring in the rights issue into this case, this community rights issue, and the right of people to have clean air and clean water and to make decisions for their own community. At that time, the city banded, this is odd, in a supposedly progressive community. The city council actually joined with the Colorado Oil and Gas Association to prevent us from intervening in that lawsuit. And of course, the city defended it based on state preemption and lost. And then they said, well, we're not going to appeal this. Goodbye. So that's how that happened. And of course, other cities experienced the same thing. I think Fort Collins was sued. Longmont was sued. Longmont was sued by the state of Colorado, which is an interesting situation where the governor is practically suing his own constituents. And all those two lawsuits went to the Colorado Supreme Court. And again, because the court reflects the reality of what's happening. The court doesn't lead, it's following. And so the court, of course, agrees with this industry. Right. So I guess communities are supposed to go back to what they were and go, well, never mind, we're sorry we brought it up. And we're not in that position. We're not doing that.
Right. And that's really an interesting point. I mean, the court doesn't legislate, right? You know, it's not the court's responsibility to create statute. Now, sometimes it could happen, right? Right.
Yes, sometimes it does, like corporate personhood and things like that. Yes, it does. It can create those kinds of things, but in this case, no.
Right. But, you know, it's this idea, I've seen this realization, the veil that parts with people when they've been involved in this fracking fight here in this state. And it's this basic idea that just gets ripped away from them, that they really do not have the human right to determine the future of their municipality, of their community.
That's right.
And I mean, it's sad. It's sad to really see that.
It is sad to see that. And you know, it isn't just the issue of fracking or oil and gas extraction or sludge dumping or factory farms is another issue, certainly in other parts of the country. It's plastic bag bans. If you want if you want to do something with rent control, if you want to raise the minimum wage for your local community, you are precluded from doing any of those social justice things as well, right. All for the benefit of corporate profit.
Right. You know, of affordable housing ordinances, you know, we can't have rent control ordinances in our municipalities here in Colorado. And so, you know, we're starting to see rents really skyrocket here on the Front Range because it's just this kind of like libertarian free for all as far as affordable housing goes. And you would think that something as logical as the sustainability of making sure that your workforce has a place, the workforce housing issue, right?
Yes, has a place to live and survive, and maybe a wage to actually be able to afford to live.
Right.
You know, by some of the things that cities do, and they're certainly admirable with affordable housing, is basically, isn't that cutting some slack to corporations? Say, hey, you don't have to pay those people that much. We'll take care of it.
Well, I mean, it's probably just another form of corporate welfare when you think about it.
Yes, you know? It is. It is. It's keeping the low-wage labor force.
Right. Exactly. And you know, it's this continuing saga of government passing on, corporations passing on their overhead and their cost of doing business, passing that on to us. You know, we see that in the Walmart scenario, and you know, it just people can't afford to work, but they don't have any choice. You know, and it's really, and then what this is compounded by the fact that now we have communities that can't even determine, you know, the quality of their air and water. So
something as basic as that. Or your plans to make a sustainable community. I mean, Boulder County is very big on this, you know, renewables and environmentalism. But the fact is, we can't buy enough light bulbs and low flow toilets to save us if we're surrounded by oil and gas fracking operations. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
That's a really important point. You know, we always have to do our part as individuals, but the real climate change is really impacted from the corporate level to the greater extent. That doesn't mean that we don't stop recycling. It doesn't mean that all of those things, right? But especially in your community in Lafayette, the impact on the environment really begins with the corporate interference.
That's right. That's right. So what can we do? You know, it's interesting when this comes up because people who are very involved in, you know, composting and solar panels and all those things, and they're great, but we cannot consume our way out of this problem. We simply cannot do it as individuals. And so it's hard to keep bringing that up to people who are so well-intentioned and so looking for the good side to say, this is not it. This is not going to solve the massive climate problem that we're facing if that's all we do and think it's all our consumer choices. It isn't.
Right. That's exactly right. And so So then this creates a situation then, if you've already had the corporations kind of push back on your community rights in Lafayette, you're running for re-election. So what is the current landscape in Lafayette right now?
Okay. Well, our original lawsuit, of course, that was a charter amendment to our city charter. And so that lost in court. And because we were not able to be interveners, even make the argument on the basis of community rights and right to clean air. So seeing that this is now coming towards our community, you can see it coming. We're next to, we're on the shale formation. And so last spring, I proposed an ordinance that I called an ordinance called the Climate Bill of Rights. And the Climate Bill of Rights was essentially the same as our original Community Bill of Rights, but it had a kicker in there. It said if our citizens, our residents, are engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience to enforce this, because the city will not, that our police were not allowed to arrest them. And boy, did that throw a ringer into it.
So your proposed legislation
Yes.
would create kind of a firewall around protesters.
That's what my goal was. What actually happened is that while I was on vacation, that climate bill was watered down and the direct action part was removed.
Oh boy.
And yes, and there was a vote on it. Of course, ordinances have 2 readings, and so I was back in town for the next one, and then the fight's on, and I said, "What are you doing?" Well, we can't do this kind of civil disobedience and tie the hands of our policemen. I said, they understand the difference between violence and nonviolence. Certainly, you deal with it all the time. There's a kid on a skateboard or somebody taking his car and, running into somebody else's car. There's a difference. We've certainly done that in the area of marijuana, where we've said, hey, back off of this. We're not dealing with people with small amounts of marijuana. What about dealing with the undocumented people? When you tell our police force, which we did, we're not going to be ICE agents here. I mean, that's all structuring and saying we as a community have a right to kind of direct our own police force. Well, that got taken out. The climate bill passed in a watered down version, and this was last March. And then about a month ago, one of the major oil and gas operators in Colorado filed what's called a spacing application. That means, here we got dibs, we're going to drill in this area. And it encompasses the northeast corner of Lafayette, some unincorporated Boulder County, and it's my neighborhood now. So now it's personal.
Boy.
What we told people, this is coming. We told them 4 years ago, it's going to happen. Our city council told people, we haven't had a well drilled here in 24 years. It's not going to happen. Well, it happened. And so now, that this happened, this is a whole other ringer in this election. It's just a huge issue. Some of the candidates are running from it as fast as they can. And, I'm saying this is exactly what I said was going to happen. Now we have this watered down version of our, what we call the Climate Bill of Rights. I said, I want it restored to its original. So, the fight's on.
So you've reintroduced that language to update that ordinance?
I have not. If I am reelected, I will. If I'm not reelected, we will demand that the new council do it.
Okay. Well, either way, we're going forward, right?
Either way, we're going forward. So, I think it'll be easier for all of them if I am reelected than if I'm not.
Right. Yeah, unless they want dogs and cats living together, they better reelect.
That's right, exactly. So it's kind of a running joke that said, you better run. You better kind of campaign for me, because it'll be easier if I'm sitting there with you than if I'm the other side of the dais.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and you have time on your hands. You're retired.
I'm retired, and I do have time on my hands. A good use of retirees' time.
That's right. That's right. So this spacing plan that the extractors have submitted, and it's got all of these other jurisdictions that have purview over this new plan.
Well, one other jurisdiction, and that's Boulder County. So it's Boulder County and Lafayette on this particular one. Yes.
Okay. And this is a really big event happening in the community right now.
It's huge. It's a huge issue. And of course, people are panicked because in this area where they said, we've got dibs, we own the mineral rights, we're going to drill somewhere in this area, is an elementary school. And so the parents in that elementary school are freaked. And this particular company that filed the spacing plan, it's 8 North LLC, which is a division of Extraction Oil and Gas. Extraction Oil and Gas is drilling next to a low-income, primarily Hispanic middle school just outside Greeley. They were going to drill in another area closer to more expensive homes, and they moved it next to the school. They're being sued for that now on the basis of, environmental justice. This is an environmental justice issue. But yes, we have a grammar school here, and it is heavily Hispanic, the grammar school in this area that's in the spacing. And my grandchildren go to that school.
Is this Pioneer?
Pioneer. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and they have a really good program. This is a school that has a bilingual or dual language program, and
bilingual school is great. My 2 grandchildren both speak Spanish fairly fluently and with no accent, I have heard.
Yeah, I've noticed they're really great. And so this is a school that's doing a lot to heal some of our societal ills. I mean, Lafayette is really a place where people want to work together. I mean, you made allusion to the sanctuary cities ordinance that you worked on earlier in the year, and tell us a little bit about that. I mean, just as a demonstration of a community that's being trying to be built here.
Well, we've done resolutions for the DACA recipients, and actually, I would have liked to see that much stronger. I actually rewrote it to make it stronger, to say, what about their parents? What about their families? What about the rest of the people? I mean, and so the city has taken, in terms of resolutions, taken a stand on this. We're not going to use our police to ask for immigration status. So we're very conscious of this, and we do have a Hispanic population in Lafayette. We're very conscious of this, and people are very concerned about it. And so we've taken that viewpoint, which I think is wonderful. I totally support that. Totally.
Right. I mean, it's a situation where it's going to be all hands on deck, yes. And so one thing that I'm hearing that you really want to focus on is really how your role as a council person. How is that going to be different? I mean, you have some different ideas about what your responsibilities are, where you can kind of push the envelope. Give us an idea of, once you're reelected, kinds of the fights that you want to take up and the processes and procedures that you want to follow.
Well, this is one that's certainly right in front of us now. And this is one that, certain things bubble up to the top, and this is it. It's happening right now. I certainly want to take on that fight. Our current council has decided that they are going to take time out to write regulations. As soon as you write regulations, what you are doing is negotiating the terms of your own surrender. So I absolutely want to tackle that issue. I absolutely want to get local residents mobilized and ready for this, because it's going to take more than sitting back and waiting for city council. I'm only one member for city council to do something, and they don't seem to be inclined to do anything more than what they're allowed to do under the current system. So that, to me, is the major issue: mobilizing the community, being transparent with the community, engaging them, telling them how the system works, and stop bullshitting them that, this is normal, the way this system works. So I think it's going to require somebody who's, out in front of this, who's direct, who's willing to tell people directly how it works and not pussyfoot around with it, because you're part of some political party that doesn't want to confront the industry directly. And so really that's what I hope to be doing. It could be a complete nightmare, let me just tell you.
That could be it. Now, you made some allusion there to the partisan side of this. And so give us a little idea of what the political landscape is there in Lafayette. Okay. You are a registered Green, and also want to hear why you became a Green.
Okay. The political landscape in Lafayette, we're in Boulder County. Boulder County is heavily Democrat in Colorado, as you know. I mean, that's where the big pushes come from. There's a lot of money in the city of Boulder. And so they were able to, some of the big money guys were able to flip the state, turn it Democratic. So people who typically run or certainly are in council right now, I can't say there are other candidates running now, but the council right now, I would say, is almost all Democratic Party insiders from the Boulder County Democrats. And there is a particular approach that they have to take to this industry because, as you know, with the governor and, you know, how this works in Colorado, you cannot confront this industry directly. So you have to nibble around the edges. You have to tell communities, well, maybe you can regulate it a little bit. And that's exactly what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that from every Democrat in Boulder County, the county commissioners, our state reps, the U.S. rep, the local city councils. It's almost like a script being written by this Democratic Party in Boulder County or, you know, at the state level. And so that's kind of what you're up against.
So you don't necessarily agree with this idea that you can kind of downshift extraction via regulation?
Oh, absolutely not. That's a joke. No. You're regulating what? How many this is what I told the council. I mean, the kids who are living near this are getting horrendous nosebleeds from chemical exposure. So what are we regulating? Are we saying 2 nosebleeds a week is okay, but 3 is not good? I mean, come on. What the hell are we talking about here? Or what we're really talking about is who gets to make this decision. Who gets to sit down as a community and decide, is this something we want in our community? Is this something we need? Or is this something that is, you know, poisoning and curing all kinds of issues with our children and our families? Who gets to make the decision? And so, no, regulation is just saying we surrender and on your terms.
Okay. Regulations are within the purview sometimes of a city council member, though. So once you're elected, how will you kind of navigate that contradiction? What will you do?
Well, that's a good point. First of all, I want our original Climate Bill of Rights restored with the direct action piece. I will not vote for the regulations. I won't, because they're pointless and they're hopeless, and it tells people that this is all you can get. This is the terms by which you're going to surrender to this industry. So the other thing is, certainly as a city council, we need to educate people. We've got a lot of people moving in here from out of state who have no idea what this is or how this works. And they're always in a state of shock when they find it out. Because Colorado has such a green, you know, reputation. We're so beautiful and we have the mountains and all that stuff. So we want to educate people. We certainly want to communicate with them, and we want to be transparent with them over how the system works, because they cannot be engaged and help in the fight if they don't understand how this system works. And it really takes leaders to explain that. You can't pussyfoot around with that. You can't cover that up and expect people to engage or become active. And certainly we need to organize. We need to organize people for direct actions if that's what it comes to. And I would expect the city council to be there organizing and in on them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how bad it is. Support. They need to support this kind of Climate Bill of Rights that we had and this entity that was part of it with the direct action, and mobilize the community, get the community mobilized to say no. I mean, how else are we going to deal with this unless it's people power? How else do you deal with this kind of an assault unless it's by mobilizing people? And then finally, you know, I say the city council's job is to protect people, and that protection is part of the direct action component of that Climate Bill of Rights. That's your job. And protect them from this kind of chemical assault that this industry releases on neighborhoods.
Right. We also have we're one of the few states in Colorado where we can run citizens ballot initiatives. That was kind of downshifted a little bit with 71. That was just.
Oh yeah.
But it's not impossible.
No.
What would you say a city council member's role would be in the citizen initiative process. I mean, you're a little familiar with that.
Yes, I think they have to support it, which of course the last city council when we ran our ballot initiative in 2013 did not. They passed a resolution, told people not to vote for it. And I think city councils have to take a stand on Amendment 71. I'm thinking there's going to be some lawsuits involved with that. I mean, that was an appalling stripping of your constitutional right as a member of the state to do ballot initiatives. And frankly, it was supported by both the Republican Party and every living Democratic governor. There were 4 of them. So this was equal opportunity. This wasn't right versus left or Trump versus Clinton. This was equal opportunity.
Right.
And
so, and for those people who don't know what Colorado's Amendment 71 is, essentially, you know, we are one of the few states in the nation that we do have a constitutional right to run citizen ballot initiatives. And it, you know, you had to collect a certain percentage of signatures, and at one point you could get them from anywhere. And so typically, if it was sort of a left-leaning sort of ballot initiative, you would concentrate your efforts in Denver, Boulder area because those do tend to be left-leaning. Now, Amendment 71 requires, what is it, 2% of all signatures in every county?
No, it's in every state Senate district.
That's right.
So you're out in very rural, extremely rural areas that are so lightly populated. I mean, basically, if you've got enough money to hire petition signatures to do a state-level ballot initiative, you can manage it. If you're a grassroots organization, forget it. You're done for.
Right.
Because the big operators use paid petitioners, and the grassroots organizations simply just can't afford to do that. So it really, I would say it killed the state ballot initiative process for any kind of grassroots. And remember what we got out of some of these things. We got legal marijuana. We got death with dignity. We almost had the single payer health care that was on the ballot. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's some weird things that happen. And then there's some things because people are generally more progressive than their leaders are, and they have that option to force those issues. And that's pretty much been taken away from grassroots operating. You can still do it at the local level, however.
Right. And we still have the right to run municipal ballot initiative. Yeah. We don't need to do statewide. But then we run into the problem of the state's override of anything that we want to do, even though many of our municipalities are home rule cities, right? I mean, I think Lafayette is home rule, Denver for sure is home rule, and we assume that means that we can just pass whatever law that we want, but the state gets to come in and override some of these things, and so that's where the complication of a ballot initiative comes in. You all did work on a ballot initiative for community rights, and that was difficult, but it definitely sounds like something that needs to happen, and you really could consider that a city council member with a good bully pulpit can really push along the grassroots mobilization. Absolutely, because you do have more of a voice when you're on council, and you do have, and people do listen and want to learn. So to me, that's a key issue. And given what we're dealing with, particularly with this issue, not with others. I mean, the city has run effectively there, I'm not seeing the same level, the corruption that you would see in Chicago. This is a small community. Or Denver.
But this issue is so freighted that now I'm seeing things that the issue of transparency, for example, I think people should know and understand how the system works. I mean, within the last week, the council got a letter from the Colorado Petroleum Association. To me, it's a typical threatening letter. I've seen them many times. But for people who are new to the city or not involved, they need to see this. They need to understand how the industry works and how these threats come about. And so when I got it, I contacted the city attorney. I said, this certainly isn't privileged information to me. This is public. It was a letter to the council. He said, oh, no, it's public. So I emailed the mayor and city administrator, and I said, I think you really need to post this on the city's website. We have a special page for oil and gas, so people have reference material, and they can go in and look at, local kinds of oil and gas issues, and then the big ones. And I said, I think this would be good to post there so people can go and see. It's a learning experience. It illustrates how the system operates. And they would not post it on the city's website, which was very odd.
What was the reason for not posting it?
It was kind of a fluky reason. It was that the postings about oil and gas on the city's oil and gas page are related to things that the council does, and this just didn't kind of fit with the other resources. I'm fairly quoting that line, fit with the other resources. And when I originally asked about this, I said, I don't want to be the one to post this or put it online. I think the city should do this. So basically, I'm giving you the opportunity to, do the transparent thing, and they didn't do it. So
then what happened?
I posted it on my organization's Facebook page. So now, it's out there. And I said I didn't want to have to do this. I wanted the city to be open and transparent about this. And, so that's kind of what we're dealing with. And my fear is, if there's another council and I'm not on it and I'm not there to post things will not be transparent. They will be hidden because they're scary. And when people read these things, they might come into a council meeting and start hollering at all the councilors. And so we don't want to have that. That's really scary.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I could understand the resistance of the council to want to post some of these things because for a lot of this, their hands really are tied, right?
Yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
But then that brings up the question of why hide it? If you know that you really can't impact it to the degree that you say that you want to, why hide it? That does bring up a question, though, and a lot of these fights, especially the ones that are really tied to community rights and not even really just fracking. A city council, their hands are tied.
Well, they need to untie them, Andrea.
So what does that look like?
That looks like, first of all, in order to achieve anything, and we know this, certainly we saw it with the civil rights movement, people didn't go lobby their legislators and get anything done because it didn't work. And that's sort of what we're told to do. We'll go to the state legislature or go to the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Committee meetings. That's a great way to funnel you, release all your activism where it'll be totally ineffectual. And of course, when you talk about any movement for social justice or economic justice or environmental justice, at some point, communities have to say, I'm not obeying. I'm not doing this. This is over, just like the civil rights movement, just like the labor movement, just like all these movements. Eventually it comes to that because you are so constrained by all these rules and laws that there's nothing else to do. You have to make that kind of a conflict out of it. And I think city governments could actually do that. I think they could generate that kind of conflict and bring it to the forefront and display how this works, as we know other movements and other civil rights and environmental rights and social rights movements worked. Display the conflict, display what's happening, and then it's a way to motivate people.
It's interesting how, given the sort of the demise of the Fourth Estate, the demise of journalism, how the role that you're describing actually sort of takes on those responsibilities in a way. And so that's one way that you see that your leadership on city council it needs to transform into. You definitely are advocating for more and more transparency. You're clearly willing to take that on into your own hands if necessary. And you've said that your leadership has an educational role and a community advocate role.
Yes,
getting those daylight opportunities for resistance. Now, the word resist has taken on sort of a liberal Democrat sort of flavor.
I know. There's an organization called
hashtag
the Democrats have, resist right. Or something, yeah.
So what does what does resistance in Lafayette look like?
I think it looks like, first of all, saying we have a right to say no. We have a right to say no to this. And then secondly, how do we back up that right? How obedient do we have to be? If permits come in, do we have to issue them? We can say no. What's going to happen? Are they going to send out the National Guard and arrest the entire city council? I hardly think that's going to happen. On the other hand, maybe it will. Those are the kinds of moves that a city that's determined can make in conjunction with their own residents. in conjunction with their own residents that says, we are in this with you. We understand. And we are going to help. We are going to be part of this. So those are the kinds of movements that are kind of, I don't know, radical. But I think that's the kind of thing that gets people organized, that gets them committed and says, we're all in this together as a community. And we need to protect ourselves, our environment. I mean, I don't know how we're going to fight this on a global scale when you can't even deal with this stuff in your own little community of 27,000 people.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's exactly true. But, you know, one of the things that I've noticed in the mobilization, you know, you're also part of this group, East Boulder County United, and that's a group that's really pushing back on the extraction industry. But one of the things that I've really seen buttressed by your leadership is the creativity and the resolve from community members.
Yes.
Who really weren't engaged on this. I mean, is there anybody in the community who you think has been galvanized? Any stories that you can tell about people that have, you know, the school marm that became the great, you know, direct action person? I mean, anybody that you can think of?
You know, there's a whole group of them. Of course, my son is one of them, but there's just a whole group of people who have surprisingly said, you know, who knew nothing about this. And a lot of them are newcomers, frankly, to Colorado. And who said, wait a minute, you know, we can't have this. I'm really surprised at the number and kinds of people. I mean, school teachers and moms and dads and grandmas. It's just really, it's heartening. And because people have such an environmental feeling in this area of Colorado too, I think it's easier for them to understand some of the issues and easier for them to get involved because they have a really sense of what we're up against in terms of climate change and so on. So I've just seen so many just really terrific people, old, young. We've got kids out demonstrating. My grandkids are doing it. So it's just been a really phenomenal experience. And we sort of say when we started doing this that we would probably meet some of the best people in Colorado over this. And I would say we have the people who have gotten engaged and involved.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We are the superheroes that we've been waiting for.
Who else is going to do it if not
That's
us?
exactly
Who's coming
right.
along? Where's Superman? He's not here.
And he's not wearing blue either.
No, he's not. Certainly not. Now, you wanted to ask me why I joined the Green Party. Mm-hmm. So, my family, going back many years in Chicago, they were all union guys. They were FDR Democrats for 1,001 years. Very kind of progressive family, as people were, blue-collar laborers were then. And, you know, the Democratic Party was kind of a people's party at one point. I left mentally when I saw Obama bring back all the fraudsters into his cabinet after the financial meltdown. And I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with this. The fix is in. I'm done. And so I kind of took some time and looked around, and I read a lot of your material. And I said, that's exactly the way I think. That's the kind of progressive values that I have. That's it. And so I registered as a Green.
And you registered while you were in office in your first term?
I did.
Yeah, and you are not pulling punches when it comes to the differentiation between the two parties. You've been very vocal.
Absolutely not. I've written the several editorials. I mean, to me, having a long time, 70 years of experience with this, including with my family, I can say the Democratic Party has walked away from the people and walked to neoliberalism and corporate interests. I've certainly seen it. And it's over. They do not represent people any longer. They represent those interests. And so it's blatant. And in fact, to me, as somebody I think is extremely liberal, it's easier to deal sometimes with people on the right because they're more straightforward. Whereas when you deal with people who are, progressive Democrats, there's a veneer there of I don't know what it is. It makes it very hard to deal with. It's not straightforward, and it's not, in your face, and it's not something you can deal with directly. There's a very superficial veneer on top of something that's very neoliberal and very corporate focused.
And so the colleagues that you have on the city council, they've kind of let you down a little bit, right? I mean, and the talking points and the
Yes, they've, and it feels to me, because a number of them I know are Democratic Party and connected in the Democratic Party in Boulder. It seems to me almost like they're all reading from a script, because I've heard the same words from other people, other Democrats in the party, county commissioners, councilors, and other city councils in this northern Denver, Boulder area. And I've heard the same lines. It's almost like, is somebody writing these for you? The same phrasing. And so it's very frustrating. And it really is very looking at people and saying, well, there's nothing you can do. This is the best we can do. I think is a very hopeless position. It's just hopeless. Come on. We've got more power than we think we do. And
right. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And Lafayette definitely has been a place that has shown that. Yes. And quite frankly, if I could editorialize, it's time for Lafayette to have representation that represents their spirit, represents their resistance.
Yes. And not just the talk, but we've got to be walking the talk now.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We've got some really good things going for us, and really concerned and very welcoming and open community. But on this topic, boy, we're stuck in the same old mindset, and we've got to get over that.
Yeah, and what we often see is that community is often much more further ahead, much more progressive than elected officials tend to be.
Oh, totally. That's why a ballot initiative or state ballot initiative is so important, because people are usually, by nature, more progressive than the people who are protecting the powerful that hold office. So
right, right. So Lafayette in 4 years, after you've, do you have another term after this?
No, this would be, if I'm re-elected, this would be my last term. You're term limited.
Okay, so at the end of the 4 years, assuming that you're re-elected, and I should say that the field is 15 other candidates.
15 people for 4 seats. So, something's a buzz here.
and so it's going to be sort of an approval voting kind of a situation.
We don't have wards or precincts, so it's it's just a straightforward vote, and the city council, the elected councilors then elect the mayor, so that's how it works here.
And the top four get the
right, exactly. The top 3 get a 4-year term, and the 4th vote getter gets a 2-year term, so they can stagger the elections. Mm-hmm.
So after 4 years, what does Lafayette look like?
You know what I'd like to see after 4 years? I'd like to see Lafayette be the leader in this community rights issue. I'd like to see other communities like Broomfield, Erie, Thornton, the other ones that are surrounding us where they're dealing with the same issue. I'd like to see them all join together and say, this is enough. That would be phenomenal. And that would be very scary to the powers that be to do that.
I think it would. Well, Merrily, where do people get in touch with you?
Well, people can find me on Facebook. It's Merrily for Council on Facebook. And why am I totally drawing a blank with that website? I can't remember it.
Merrily for Lafayette.
MerrilyForLafayette.com. And the other one is you can email me directly at Merrily, and it's just like the word Merrily, like Merrily we roll along, MERRILY.Mazza, MAZZA at Comcast.net. You can deal with me directly and email me directly.
Right, definitely on Facebook.
Yeah.
Great. Well, as I said at the beginning, you are a candidacy that we're really excited about in Colorado. I mean, you have really been a fighter and a bellwether in this fight against extraction here in the state. Yeah. The county just to the north of you, Weld County, is the most fracked county in the nation.
Yes.
So it's hard to consider that little Merrily Mazza, the grandmother originally from Chicago, is one of the people that are standing in the way from a complete total corporate extraction takeover of our air and water here in Colorado. But I personally want to thank you for the fight that you've engaged and the way that you've helped to animate and buttress the community. Lafayette folks are some fighting folks, and the rest of the state really owes them a debt of gratitude for their activism, and you're absolutely in the mix.
They do, and there's a lot of fighters here. So I think, if I'm not elected, I'm not going away. In fact, as I said, it could be worse for the people who are.
So you know what's good for you, Democrats.
That's right. Right, exactly. Perfect.
So that's your website is Merrily for Lafayette.
Yeah.
Merrily Lafayette Council on Facebook.
Yes.
And then people can get in touch with you via those pages, via email and that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
Merrily, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the Lafayette of the future.
Yeah.
In the next 4 years. And the Green Party is behind you. We're excited about your candidacy from all nationally, from the state, and from the local areas. So thanks so much for your time, Merrily. Best of luck, and let's keep fighting.
Okay, let's do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, Andrea.